Hello, John. Thank you for coming back to the channel here. This is our part 36 of a long series. And we have some interesting coverage to talk about in terms of
something happened?
yeah. Yeah, something did happen over
Really? Did something happen?
So I'm sure we'll dive deeply into this, and we are live on YouTube and we are live on X Spaces. For the ones that are listening, please type in questions or ask for the mic on X Spaces, and you'll be able to ask questions live on the show. And then I will also do a re-release of the premieres on the other 7 channels that I have. So take it away, John.
Well, now, I remember telling you a couple weeks ago, it says, I wonder what will be happening by the time we do this show. And I'm going to start by doing something a little different. I'm going to read to you all a statement that I put in my last Hogue prophecy report that was called the Mayday, Mayday report. Saying that there's going to be some big things happening in June and also happening. They were also ongoing as I was writing it. But there was this one statement I wanted to make, and it's a premonition. And I was so horrified by it that I erased it. But then a few days later, I realized, no, right or wrong, I've got to post this for everybody. And so the title, it was posted on the 27th of May, 2025 at 6:19 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. It was entitled A Premonition That Is Too Terrible to Publish and Too Necessary Not to Share. And so it had a little preamble, but I'm just going to get right into what the premonition was. Sometime in early June, around 8th June, perhaps, but certainly in the month of June 2025, as his desperate window of opportunity, Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, will dare see the fulfillment of his last outrage, of many he has committed since 7th October 2023. Now, the early preamble was looking at all the things that were aggressive acts of war that started this whole missile back and forth between him and Iran. He started it with an act of war by launching missiles on April Fool's Day last year that went into the Iranian embassy in Damascus, which, if you understand international law, the territory of an embassy is considered the territory of the nation it represents. So to fire upon it, willfully, one state firing upon another state's embassy, is an act of war. So he did that. He killed a number of generals, Hezbollah and others there, and staff. And what then happened was that the Iranians then, I think a little later in April, did their first demonstration of sending a lot of drones and missiles to strike Israel as a deterrent, to tell them, look, we have the ability to reach out and touch you. We have the ability, we're not going to seek to kill anyone. We're going to kind of do what we did with Trump when they assassinated Soleimani of Iran, and just give you a demonstration of the things we can do with our missiles if we choose to aim at people rather than your equipment. And it was very effective. It was trying to say, look, we're not the Iran you fought in the 80s. We've advanced a lot of our missile work. Some of our Tomahawk missiles are actually better than yours, more accurate. So that's what happened in early 2020. This demonstration was hit a number of targets and two air bases. And long story short, uh, the Israelis just kind of saw it and noticed it, but when no further attacks came, they just do what they always mistakenly do, and that is think that being restrained is a form of weakness. So then Netanyahu, who desperately wants this war, I would just simply say that 30 years of his life he is dedicated to this war. He is using Israel as his tool to defeat Iran, destroy Hezbollah in his north, destroy Syria, the bridge between Iran and the north and Lebanon. And he has had that kind of gambling capability of winning mad moves that I haven't seen a parallel since Adolf Hitler, where he keeps winning by doing crazy things. So more sane people, his adversaries, are not expecting these mad moves. And of course, each time he does that, he's further overextending his people, just like Hitler did, and creating a situation where the strain of his victories, going these mad attempts, like which ultimately led to the decapitation of the leadership of Hezbollah, that threw Hezbollah out of in Lebanon out of the war. And then he went on to, in a few weeks, do what hadn't been done in Syria for decades. Syria literally collapsed, imploded on itself, allowing his armies to take the rest of the Golden Heights and dominate approach by Damascus. Uh, at the same time, he's fighting a war with Hamas that he has not won in the Gaza Strip. If anything, the numbers of the Hamas fighters have increased, even though he has destroyed the Gaza Strip and has killed about at least 600,000 civilians. That may be low. Um, you will not hear that in the mainstream press. He is now in this year fighting a war of systematic starvation that is putting another 400,000 Palestinian civilians, mostly children, under threat of dying of starvation. He has thrown out UNRWA, the United Nations organization, which has been supplying food stations, hundreds of them across the Gaza Strip, and has been basically helping the Gazans since 1950s, early 1950s. He managed to get them thrown out of the region and replaced by this Mossad Secret Service front with mercenaries as guards that literally is trying to lure the Gazans out of the north, out of the ruins, to the only one station down the south part near the Egyptian border where they can get food. And so what happens is the people have been slowly moving, they're starving to death, they're slowly moving across this area, constantly being shot at by snipers and bombed by the Israelis. And when they get there, I have seen scenes, unspeakable scenes, where people are put cheek to jowl, shoulder to shoulder in the middle of the daylight, noon. That's when they throw some boxes in of food, and to the sea of starving people. And then what is also happening now that the war has happened with Iran, the amount of death and destruction is tenfold. While everybody's attention is on this war, the willful slaughter of Palestinians, they are aiming to destroy all 2.3 million of them. And a real Holocaust is taking place. So he's getting away with that. But he's not winning the war with Hamas. He hasn't defeated Hamas. Hamas survives. It's actually increased its numbers. And a lot of his IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, kind of an ironic term when it's so offensive, it should be IOF, offensive forces, is at a point. These armies are not built to be used this way. The Israeli doctrine has always been a short, violent war that they win, not a war that's now over 20 months. So it goes against what it's built for working. So it's breaking down. So He has gotten every step, and his steps are parallel also to neoconservatives who are very pro-Zionist in the United States. The 7 countries that they wish to take down and control the Middle East since neoconservatives began in the 90s. Well, they've succeeded in taking everyone down except the Big Apple, the head of the snake, Iran. So this is like the last step, and he has survived somehow. He's even survived health crises that has him constantly in attendant with 2 surgeons wherever he goes. He's got a pacemaker. He's dying basically, slowly, of stage 4 prostate cancer. He had his prostate removed last year because of it. So he doesn't have that much time to go, and he's just fighting for the last bit of life to make his final goal of taking down the last enemy of the Israeli state and have full dominance in the region. And that is Iran. So now that Trump is the president, Trump, I will just simply say, is extremely compromised by his, as is the United States government, by the undue influence of a foreign nation called Israel and the Zionist movement through the AIPAC system. It should be a foreign operator, but it gets around that. And basically, except for a handful of your congressmen and women and senators, the United States Congress is serving Israel first, not the United States. The United States president and executive branch is attempting to do the same thing. Now, um, the basically it was looking like the Iranians were going to get a nuclear deal. Uh, the Iranians don't want to have atomic bombs, never have. It's un-Islamic to them. And so when the negotiators were coming, Witkoff and all those people to deal with their opposites in Iran, negotiating team, um, it kept going back and forth where it looked like they're going to get a deal. And every time it came close to where everybody's agreed, suddenly it would all go back to square one, where we're not even going to allow you not to have nuclear weapons, which you don't want. We're not even going to allow you to even have a civilian nuclear program, which is the right of every sovereign nation. And one more thing, we want you to destroy all of your missiles. Now, this is called by some people the Libyan option. And that's kind of what happened to Gaddafi back in the turn of the century. He wanted to open up to the West again and stop his nuclear programs, stop his missile programs. And basically, he dismantled all of that to show that in good faith that he wanted to come back into the fold of mainstream Western nations. And that led to him being very easily overthrown and destroyed by NATO in the civil war that happened between the Benghazi eastern side of Libya and the Tripolitan side, which was Gaddafi's side. NATO was supposed to be flying over that area to protect civilians from massacres, but suddenly NATO chose one side over the other, and they obliterated Gaddafi. And now that country's a destroyed nation ever since, with civil wars and instability. And also, as Gaddafi warned, if you take my country down, the doorway to millions and millions of refugees coming into Europe will be a floodgate built, broken and opened wide into Europe, which has all come true. Now, the so it was rather strange how every time it looked like a peace treaty was going to come, it was then going back to square one. About 3 times this happened. And it was getting to a point where then on True Social, the president started to write in ways that I've never heard a US president write. I mean, I almost wanted to call him Don Trumpo, making you an offer you can't refuse. And kind of wake up with a horse head in your bed the next day, a la Godfather style. He was talking like a godfather. It was crude, it was unpresidential, and he was even making statements like, you do it or else. You make peace with us. And of course, they were ready to make peace. It was like anytime the peace was finally happening, the Israeli lobby would come in and influence Trump to say, no, all the offers off. You just have to 100% go the Libya future, which has a very clear ending. And anybody with a brain in Iran knows what that is. So it's no deal. So, but still, Trump in his Truth Social was saying, "Hey, no, we're close. We'll close. Keep coming." And so, on Friday the 13th, although when there was a plan on Friday the 13th, 15th, I think on the 15th of June, there was going to be a meeting again of Witkoff and Trump's people with the Iranian team of diplomats, and they were going to resume again. But then suddenly, Israel launched a Pearl Harbor attack. Something, a day of infamy that hasn't happened since December 7th, 1941, where out of the blue, without a warning, they struck Iran. And Iran was in a complacent space because it wanted the peace. That was their mistake. And Israel did a lot of damage on Friday the 13th, which will go down in history as the Pearl Harbor event of this Third World War, that similar to what happened in the Second World War, which basically made the World War a world war by that time because America joined into the World War and then it was a world war. Now, we have a different set of things that are fighting in this conventional phase of World War III, which started in the 22nd of February 2022. This war is essentially the collective West, led by a crumbling hegemon, America, which is a fight to retain the dominance that the West has had in world affairs for 500 years, but is losing it. It's losing it economically, politically, and militarily. And what is rising in his place is a world that now has different choices than the US dollar to create its world. The sanctioning of the US dollar to two-thirds of the world is done. People are finished with it. We have now rival, rising, equal peer powers in the world again, not an American hegemon that could get away with this since 1990 up until this time. We have a new Russia. It's a Christian nation. It is not a communist nation. It is a democracy. And I know because I interact with them a lot, I don't get censored in Russian TV like I get here. Um, and I am critical of things. Everybody in Russia is critical about things. You just have to go get a Telegram subscription and just see what kind of interaction is going on daily in Russia and political debates and talks. It's a lot richer democracy, unfortunately, than what we have today in America. You'll never know that if you just watch Fox and CNN and the legacy news. So this has happened. This war suddenly is struck. The Israelis are able to launch a lot of missiles, do a lot of damage, hit a lot of nuclear sites in Iran. And what happened was that there had been a cyber attack that for 36 hours threw off the system of defense, missile defense system of Iran. And it did it so completely, but they eventually recovered. And I think from what my sources are saying, that they had a lot of help from Russians, from the Russian allies, which they have an agreement with. And it took about 36 hours to get the defensive grid back online. And then what happened was Iran responded. And it responded with highly successful, constant, unending day and night missile attacks across the length and breadth of Little Israel, which is like a 16th of the size of Iran, which is a vast mountainous country. It's very hard to find things and target everything. It's all packed in one little corner in Israel. And Israel is getting so badly damaged from this that they are censoring in Israel any footage that's trying to show what's going on, although the footage is getting out online. But if you're caught, you're put in prison. And it's they at first they fired a whole lot of their old missiles, the Iranians did, which were used as cannon fodder to eat up all the Iron Dome, the Jacobs Sling, uh, and all of the THAAD system of the United States, which already was on fighting in this war, not officially yet, but they were already shooting missiles out of the sky in space to a great rate. And when you realize that they only make several hundred THAAD missiles a year, they probably went through a lot of that in the opening stages of the 3 or 4 days, the first week of this war. But then what happened is the uh, the Iranians changed their strategy in the second week. They started to hit uh, at all hours, not all day, but like one it'll be during the day, then it might be at sunset, then it might be at sunrise, then it might be at night, and then it might be past midnight. They're constantly coming in every day with something where they're firing more modern missiles and they're not getting the kind of anti-aircraft missile fire, the Iron Dome. It's failing. It's called the Iron Sieve now, and most of these weapons are hitting their targets, and they're doing devastating things to the Pentagon of Israel. The surface buildings were destroyed. The oil fields and strategic refineries to make it into gasoline to keep the country running was destroyed. There was damage done to the Dimona region reactors. I don't know to what extent. They're keeping that really secret. There are whole blocks and areas. It's starting to, long story short, Tel Aviv is starting to look like Gaza City. It's devastated in a lot of areas. People want to leave. Israelis want to leave, but the Israeli government won't let them because the greatest danger for Israel's future is this kind of fighting causing a diaspora of people leaving. You got to remember, it is a nation of 7 million Jews and 3 million Palestinian Israelis that did not leave during the takeover of Palestine in 1948 and become kind of second-class citizens inside Israel. Already 500,000 to a million Israelis since this war started on the 7th of October have already left Israel. Now, of course, some could come back. Some are coming back, but what is happening now is all the jets of El Al and all the Israeli civilian airlines have now flown to Cyprus to park their jets to get out of the war zone. Similarly, because of the damage to airports, military bases, air bases, a lot of the Israeli military jets are also having to park themselves in Cyprus, which isn't that far away, but it's out of the war zone. That's the extent of the damage. The Israelis do not have air control over Iran. They are still firing from Iraq their missiles in Iraq over Iraqi airspace and launching there. I don't know if any of the reports of Israeli jets going down are accurate. I don't think they are, about 3 or 4 F-35s going down. But they're just firing. They don't control the Iranian skies. They're firing tossing it from far away. Now, they are doing some damage, certainly. But they also did something that the whole world was shocked right on live TV. Iran News and its complex was bombed by Israelis. And there was this one lady who was the anchor, and she just kept doing her job with her chador on and all her hood. And she was talking, her face was exposed. She was talking on camera. It's gone all over the world. The defiance, the bravery. And here they're bombing a bunch of women reporters. Finally, the bombs were hitting other parts of the building. Then it hit her building, and then she walked through the dust out of the debris. But an hour or two later, she was back on television. So there are fatal flaws in American propaganda that unfortunately the highest people in the US government believe in. They believe their own propaganda. They believe the fact that well, they think that, that all we have to do is kill, decapitate the regime, which they killed a lot of the top people of the regime, but they did not get the supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khomeini. And he is still alive, and he's still there running it. And they didn't get the president either. And of course, a lot of the people in the military are trained to step in when people are assassinated. So what they're discovering is that the propaganda is that it's a weak government on the wishful thinking that it's a weak government that's going to fall. And because half of Iran is other ethnic groups, the Kurds, the Baluchis and others, they believe that people really want a big regime change, and it will start a revolution, and it'll all be over because the Iranians will depose their own government. That has not happened. That is absolute bunk. It is a wishful thinking that John Bolton has been living off. The man is one of the architects of these stupid ideas for decades. It's just not happening. What is happening instead is that Iran is, a lot of people. The thing about Iran is it's a very intricate political world. It has layers. It is a place where democracy exists with totalitarianism in its layers. It is quite complicated. It is quite everybody has an opinion in Iran. And like with our governments, they can be critical of the leaders, but they love the Ayatollah. He's been around almost since the beginning of the Iranian Revolution as their leader, and he uh, and a lot of people who are other ethnic groups see themselves as Iranian first, not Californians, not this or that, but Iranians. And this has united Iran because this was an attack. What happened? What did we all break apart when when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor? Did the United States break apart? Did the isolationists who really didn't want to get in the war, did they rise up and overthrow Roosevelt and bring in a new leader? No. If you look at that time, and when Pearl Harbor happened, in one night, the isolationists evaporated and said, "What can we do, Mr. President? We're at war. We've been attacked." Isolationism looked like it could never be taken out. It was taken out by the first bomb that blew up the USS Arizona, and it killed 1,000 men in Pearl Harbor. It was over. So we do not learn from history, this country. And we have done in reverse. We have played with the Iranians, with the Israelis. The United States has used them as a proxy to be like the imperial empire of Japan, unilaterally attacking us. Now, so here's the situation. The president had been talking about how he might sit and wait for 2 weeks before he would decide whether to attack or not. Of course, he also said, to be fair, he also said, of course, I could attack at any time during that period. And I figured he would. What he did over yesterday is do another Pearl Harbor with 7 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, half of the B-2 air fleet, dropping a number of Buster Bunker Moab mother of all bombs that are supposed to dig deep into Forno, the nuclear installations of Iran that are in Fornos that are under nearly a mile down. They did not destroy it. There's no radiation leaking that I have heard yet, and that is because the Iranians saw this coming. Most of those buildings that were bombed, the surface buildings of Natanz, they did destroy the ARK, ARAK, nuclear reactor dome, but it was switched off for years. So fortunately, there's no radiation of any much happening there. But all those surface buildings had been stripped bare of all the equipment, the the records, the people, and they have been since March expecting this. The Iranians have been preparing for this day for 25 years. And so they had moved all of that. We don't know where it is, but Iran's nuclear fissile material is protected. It is hiding in other mountains in a very mountainous place, and we don't know where they are. Um, Basically, it's possible that the Iranians, who never wanted a nuclear weapon, will now build one because of what we've done. Trump got on and before everybody last night with Secretary of State Rubio and Hegseth, the defense Pentagon defense guy, and a very distracted looking and peeved Vice President Vance. I mean, if you ought to watch the body language, the other two, Rubio looks like he's a zombie. The other Hegseth doesn't know which way to shift his eyes. But if you watch the vice president and potentially future president of the United States, J.D. Vance, he was listening to Trump speak in a rather deadpan energy, um, and he was blinking very rapidly. He was trying to measure each word, and he was not looking like he was happy about what has happened. And he has made it public that uh, Trump may be the leader of MAGA, but J.D. Vance is MAGA. He's from the people of the MAGA movement, where they don't want any forever wars, where they don't want to get engaged in stuff with Iran and all that. They want this president to do what he promised, and that was to fix America. No nation building except in America. And what is happening over the last few weeks is now Trump's response to that is he says, I decide what we do for MAGA. Well, that is not going down well. There are some polls that are showing a lot of MAGA people who still love him, 60% of them are upset in the direction Trump is going. And it's and JD Vance is a person in Trump's cabinet that is representing that, as is Tulsi Gabbard, who Trump has said, well, I don't listen to her. So what it seems that he's listening to is he's literally listening to Israeli Defense Ministry intelligence, Mossad Defense Ministry intelligence. He is listening to the Israelis. He's an American president. He should not be listening to any foreign nation, but what his own intelligence people are telling him. At least have that to weigh against what they're saying, because clearly Netanyahu is doing what I'm now about to read to you. The Sometime early, and this was on the 27th of May that I wrote this thing that I really struggled with. I didn't want it. It was so terrible. I didn't want to post it, but I had to eventually put it back into the May Day articles. Sometime in early June, around 8 June perhaps, but certainly the month of June 2025, meaning it's going to happen, as Netanyahu, as his desperate window of opportunity as Prime Minister of Israel shortens, he will dare see the fulfillment of his last outrage of many he's committed since 7th October 2023. The first being the massacre of hundreds of Israeli Jews so that they would not become hostages of Hamas through the order of the Hannibal Directive. That most of the people killed on that first day, there were hundreds of people killed by the Palestinians of Hamas that broke out of their open air concentration camp in their operation. That's true. I've seen the footage, but I've seen them shooting down Israeli civilians. That did happen, but I have also seen, and it's still out there, people leaked it in the idea of the helicopter films of Israeli attack helicopters shooting a whole lot down and blowing up a whole lot more of fleeing Israeli civilians. They were fleeing the rave concert, the Nova concert that was going on. You looking at all those white cars that were all dragged together, the kind of damage done to them could not have been done by men with small arm fire and grenades. It was a kind where they were crushed, like with from rockets from helicopters. Hundreds and hundreds of cars, all in a junkyard from that attack. So this attack, the directive is there to make sure that there's no bargaining tools. Human bargaining tools are eradicated, so that Hamas cannot free thousands of people in West Bank, Israel, that are in Israeli prisons and being treated terribly. Many never seeing court to have their cases studied. Just many of them children that have been there for years. Now, um, the the thing that Netanyahu he assassinated Arab leaders, as I was saying earlier. He overthrew the al-Assad regime. He put a former head of ISIS in command of Syria in its place. He's part of that with the Turks. And basically, I'm saying Israel's unraveling. 1 million of its Jewish citizens have abandoned it. The economy is collapsing. The Israeli defense forces have been badly bloodied. They are overstretched and near reaching a mutinous state as they keep losing to Hamas, even as Netanyahu is successfully bombing and starving Semite people once again in ways not seen since the Semite people, sons and daughters of Abraham, were murdered in the Jewish-driven Semitic Holocaust of the 40s. Netanyahu is the architect of a Palestinian Semitic Holocaust, and he has run out of time to completely kill all that's left of the 2.3 Palestinians he has laid siege upon since 7th October. He had to stop his 80-day starvation campaign, denying possibly 1.7 million Palestinians still surviving him thus far since 7th October from being denied food and water. Now 400,000 are in serious weakness from lack of food and water. The world is awakening to his crimes right when he is so close to completely destroying all the Arab and Persian nations he's dedicated his whole life to destroy. So in June, he takes a jump. Benjamin Netanyahu will attempt to drag President Trump, kicking and screaming, into a war with Iran. He will use his people as the bait. He will sacrifice his air force flying into the attack in Iran. It will fail, the attack. It has not stopped Iran at all. It's damaged Iran, but it's not stopped it. He will lose now. I said this has not happened. He will lose half his air force in one night. Well, that hasn't happened yet because he's been smart enough to keep them firing outside of Iranian airspace because they cannot enter in. But that could still happen in the future. We'll see. Iran will counterattack with its overwhelming conventional missile powers, tens of thousands of missiles, attack drones, and hypersonic missiles. Iran, in one 24-hour period, will reduce Israel's infrastructure, water distilling plants, power grids, air bases, army bases, strategic oil reserves to flaming ruins. Now, that is a bit of hyperbole on my part. They did not do that all in 24 hours, but they are definitely on track in a much slower war of attrition to accomplish this. In fact, one of the reasons why Trump was forced to trump the gun, maybe, yesterday rather than wait 2 weeks is Israel doesn't have enough anti-missile missiles left in its missile defenses. It's running out in 10 days. So they will be completely open to Iranian attacks. Some reports say Netanyahu estimates that there are 22,000 Iranian missiles in their quiver. Some say it's a lot larger. Some of the Iranians say that they could keep this slow grade, steady destruction of Israel going for 5 months. We shall see who is right here. So the that is what I then said about flaming in ruins. I said that's what I hope the Iranians don't do, destroy Israel in 24 hours, because it is a trap laid for them. The trapper is Netanyahu, and he's looking to catch two victims using the flames of Israel as his bait. The first victim is the people of Israel turned to chum well, made as bait to suffer Iranian strikes to the point, basically, of Israel being at the threat of collapsing. And that is supposed to pull. He's literally knows he can't win this war with Israel. He knows if he gets involved with it, he'll get in trouble, and the Israeli people will be threatened of their future existence. And that's what I contend is what is the bait to drag Trump and the U.S. Air Forces and naval forces into the worst military defeat in United States history, like nothing it has suffered, like at the level of defeat of Nazi Germany. It's going to be like what Germany just suffered in a military defeat. It's going to be, he's already now got 3 carrier strike groups into the region, with a 4th British strike group, carrier group, also joining. An immense amount of weaponry and stuff is being, Air Force material is being landed in Saudi Arabia in the bases we have there. And if that's where they're going to strike also Iran, then we're looking at a major attack of Saudi Arabia, which makes me wonder, since MBS, Mohammed bin Salman seems to be such a potential candidate for Nostradamus's final Antichrist. It would be interesting if Iran then has to attack the Saudi kingdom because of it aiding and abetting American strikes from across the Persian Gulf from the U.S. Air Force there. We'll see. Uh, Netanyahu will compel Trump to save Israel using the psychotic belief that he has to destroy Israel in this war with Iran to save it by defeating the Iranian shark with the United States military might. Now, and Trump, who I see now is entering the first subtle stages of cognitive decline, will, with enough Christian Zionist doomsday Christian evangels egging him on in Congress and in the evangelical community, they will get him to go biblical with fire and fury upon the Iranians. And if these mad gambles don't work and they end up with the United States defeated, then Netanyahu has only one option remaining: either the U.S. defeat, the sinking of its carriers, the shooting down of its air forces, the exhausting of its very limited arsenal of conventional missiles. America, unable to face this defeat, will go nuclear on Iran. Will Trump's America join Israel and Netanyahu as pariahs of the world? I pray that I will be embarrassingly wrong about all of this, and I apologize for having to put this out to you all. But this madness of Netanyahu and his nation is real. Also, he has the support of American Christian Zionists and Christian nationalists. These believe that Armageddon must come, or they will damn well accidentally on purpose light it off in Western Asia. Madness is unpredictable. No reasonable person would do the things I've just put out there as a future potential to gravely diminish our common human future. But I am faced with the future that a madman running Israel might manipulate, a man who is president of the United States, a man who is ever blind to the evils being done by America in Israel's name. A man that I am sorry to inform you is heading for the same fate as President Biden. The former president is at the end of that journey. The current president is just beginning his long and slow descent into dementia. that will make him more politically incontinent and erratic. His administration will therefore become even more unhinged and disorganized than it already is as a result. Trump is badly misinformed now from his own doing. He will become even more misinformed tomorrow. And the Zionists have bought America's House and Senate representatives as it has bought the chief executive and his executive branch through Miriam Adelson and the AIPAC money. They have purchased Trump. He has been put in such a compromising place by deception and by the madness of Netanyahu, who is running Israel into the ground to get his war with Iran and America fighting it. That Trump can't do other than cross that red line into the abyss. He is still very early in his mental decline. He could still surprise us and pull a 180-degree change from the madness of Netanyahu. June 2025 will greatly test his fundamental war aversion, his blind love for his daughter, who is married to one of the key manipulators of the Zionists close to his ear in his very household. He is financially and emotionally compromised in this way, and the result will be that the United States will wage its final war of Armageddon on the Iranians. The future of humanity also depends on Iran to do the unthinkable, to not destroy Israel after they are attacked, leaving it in flames and ruins. Do not take the bait. If Iran just shoots down the Israeli attackers and does not send its missiles at Israel, Netanyahu's trap will go untriggered by the American president and its people stepping into it. Well, we've already, June 8th has passed, 5 days after the 8th, Friday the 13th, this war began. And now, on the 21st, yesterday, America has assumed to place itself into this war. Now, we're in a situation where the Iranians could be poised to not only fight the Americans, but also hit all of our bases. And we have a situation that could really descend into a self-imposed, projected false Armageddon. You know, I wrote over the decades from the book Messiahs, and also recently in my recent May Day Hogue prophecy reports, that there's a lot of evidence in the prophetic traditions of the world, if you look at them without the Friday school, Sabbath, Saturday school, or Sunday school dogma, that people have to hear first, where, oh no, before you interpret these prophecies, let me tell you what they mean, says the muezzin, says the fakir, the Muslim priest, says the Catholic priest, says the Christian priest, says the Jewish rabbi. Let me first tell you what it means. Well, one of the things that kept me of interest of people reading me for over 50 years is that I look at prophecies, all the traditions of the world, with fresh, innocent eyes. I put aside all those ideas and think for myself what I'm seeing in these prophecies. And you start to see how much it's being interpreted in a certain way to control people's thinking. One of the biggest ones of this is for 2,000 years, people have been programmed to think the book of Revelation is about our times, that it's imminent and to be fulfilled even. But I contend this is a hypnotic suggestion of programming generations of Jews, Muslims, and Christians to see it as in our times, when in fact it may very well, and there's a lot more objective evidence to support that, and I do this in my writings, that the school of thought in Christianity called preterism is actually more accurate, that all the prophecies of the Bible end and were fulfilled by the first century AD. And in fact, there is no doomsday in our future. There is no Armageddon in our future unless we hypnotize ourselves to make it happen. So that's all I have to say about that.
You want to take a question?
Yes.
You don't mind? All right. So one of the um, viewers here on YouTube was talking about Mavis. Do you think that Trump could be Mavis?
People have tried to look at MAGA and see if that can be Trump. There are things, since we're talking about the Antichrist prophecies of Nostradamus, which I have extensive experience studying for 50 years, and evolving different possible candidates. Um, there is only Trump is not the Antichrist. And I would even say, because Nostradamus had his own biases, um, of the three antichrists that he talked about, Napoleon, Napoleon King Napoleon, uh, Hitler, and Mabus, who is in our present time. Um, Nostradamus was pretty hard on Napoleon. He wasn't wrong in the things that he hated about the man that he foresaw 200 plus years in the future that would have a name no French king would ever have before, who was more of the blood of fire warrior than of royalty. He was just a minor Genovese and family of royals that lived in Corsica. He actually spoke Italian and had his French accent throughout his life was very Italian sounding. Um, but but I think all the things he says about Napoleon are true. They were fulfilled. But um, if I could, you take any historical figure, and if you only see the bad things they did and not the good things they did, it gives you an unmeasured, balanced view of the person. And I think what may be happening here is of the three antichrists, the middle one, Hitler, is hitting the mark 100%. Napoleon is getting what's wrong about him, but is not seeing all the things that he did that were quite good for the future. He basically, with the Code Napoleon, created the legal systems of Europe. He It's through his empire that the ideas of meritocracy and you rise because of your talents, not because of the Peter principle where you politic your well. You rise to your merit, which is a very big part of the French Revolution. In a way, he spread that by having to fight wars with the coalitions of kings of Europe that wanted to depose him as an upstart. Except for two of his campaigns, every campaign that he was in during the French Revolutionary Wars and the Napoleonic Wars that he was involved in very much, every war was, except for two, were wars that the Allies chose to fight to depose him and his French Empire. And because of his brilliance, he was able to outmaneuver them and move his armies in a corps system that had never been used before, where every corps is a little army with its own cavalry, artillery, and engineers and infantry. And he'd spread them out, and so that, and always never going beyond a day's march. So, in a huge fan over hundreds of miles, he could find where the big, massive royal armies of Russia, Austria, and stuff would be, and Prussia would be coming. And when one corps contacted them, then within a day, all the other corps would converge upon that battlefield, and then suddenly Napoleon's armies would amass and defeat the Allied forces. And he did this in most of the 8 coalitions that were waged against him. He only chose a war of aggression twice, and it was the downfall of him. The first was 1808, when he invaded and occupied Spain, which he really didn't need to do. It became his Vietnam, his guerrilla war. He was losing 100,000 men a year from 1808 to 1813, and he called it my Spanish ulcer, stomach ulcer. It was just eating up his resources, and at the same time, he decided to do a 600,000 man invasion of Russia because they were breaking the continental economic blockade on British goods to starve Britain out of economic war. The Russians broke it. He fought that war and he lost a 600,000 man army. Napoleon did. So that within 3 years, his empire was gone. So it's very possible that if he had just responded to attacks, the first French empire may have rivaled Charlemagne's French empire that controlled much of Europe. So this is an important setup because Mobus is the candidates that are currently out there that could be Mobus. Well, the one that's specifically quite fulfilling more than I've ever seen since I've been on the trail of the Antichrist candidate since 1983. And I've gone through all of the kinds. It seems that Mabus is best suited to a Middle Eastern figure, a Western Asian figure, because of the many ways it so easily translates into Arabic names. And the one of the best that's ever happened is the current crown prince and future king of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. He is We all know him as NBS, and it's interesting because Nostradamus often will drop vowels and give you only the consonants, so you have to find the vowels. Well, the whole world knows him as NBS because they don't want to spell out or speak his long name. But Mabus. That's one way that he embraces being Mabus. Now, show me a world leader that hasn't murdered and done things that are terrible. I mean, one could argue that Roosevelt, by making his economic sanctions on the Imperial Empire of Japan, which were so crushing, um, to prevent him from continuing his war in China and the French colonies in Vietnam, literally gave Tojo and the military government overseeing Japan only 9 months to either find a peaceful solution or attack American assets in Asia and take them out, and hopefully within 6 months take America down, including the attack on Pearl Harbor. So, that bomb that hit that lucky target for the Japanese that blew up half the people that were killed in December 7th, 1941, who were in the crew of the Arizona, to which its ruins are still a place of meditation to this day about war and infamy. Maybe a man who generally did great good did some evil there. So it's a gray area argument, but I'm seeing where there's a lot of things that remind me of Napoleon and his reforms with what the Saudi prince is trying to do. He, of course, is famously known for getting his goons to chew up some Saudi reporter, infamous act. But again, nobody who is a leader or a great leader is not without his crimes. So Nostradamus was an Islamophobe. That's another important thing about his prophecies. He had grounds for it. He lived in the mid-16th century, writing his prophecies at a time when the Muslim expansion through the Ottoman Empire was at its peak. And Suleiman the Magnificent was knocking on the doors of Vienna and Europe at a time when Christianity was beginning to be divided between Catholics and Protestants and was soon, as he had foreseen, to fight a number of very bloody religious wars across nearly a century to come, starting in the 1560s through to the 1648, the 30 Years' War. So, um, so there was reasons for him to have that bias. He was also a staunch royalist, so he reported it, but he hated the French Revolution. He called it the vulgar advent. He said, and they will kill a king then, and they will take all the church properties. It would be terrible. And he was a devout Catholic, Jewish born, but a devout Catholic. And so his bias got the best of him. He would not see the good things the revolution would do later. He couldn't. He was a royalist. He believed that the king was divinely chosen and that the vulgar people, the peasants, shouldn't overthrow him. Uh, but that happened. So I'm just simply saying there's gray areas with Napoleon and gray areas with the man that could be Mabus, the third Antichrist. Nostradamus called him that. I'm not so sure I would call Napoleon or this man, bin Laden, that. And what I was saying earlier could really be coming to the forefront. Whatever opinion you have from being called an Antichrist, if he's the one, then he's really the leader, de facto leader of Saudi Arabia. And if this war goes hot in the Gulf, if this war leads to Iran attacking Saudi Arabia, he'll be decapitated in the beginning of this war. And that's important because the prophecy says Mabus will soon die. Or in another prophecy that bridges that, Mabus is immediately annihilated. And it's after that act, the great 27-year war of the third Antichrist happens. And so, that war could be, so it's triggered. His death is a marker for the war to begin. Unlike the other two Antichrists, he is not seen at the end of of these wars that he committed himself. So this figure, Mabus, could be the victim, an early decapitation happening from this war. We'll see. So that's kind of where it is now. In the next few weeks, we'll see if it has any merit. We'll wait and see.
The next question that we have, John, it's about, do you think Trump will finish his term in office? Do you think he'll make it through the midterms?
I'm not sure he will. I'm sure if he pursues this war, he's going to lose his political base. I've felt a lot more and more now that Trump will not finish his term, is coming more and more a possibility, and that J.D. Vance will become a president much sooner than I originally thought. But it has always been, that feeling has always been there. But now that it's starting to surface, I mean, I feel a lot of things. At one time, George Noory on Coast to Coast asked a very interesting question that few people ask me. I said, Mr. Hogue, are you telling us everything that you're seeing? And no one's asked me that question until he did. I said, no, I'm there are so many things that I see that I will never tell anyone because I don't want to feed their possibility of being fulfilled. Everything that is there is a possibility that can happen. And I have to be very careful. If something is coming to the surface, but you are not seeing it just yet, then I may talk about it. But I swear to you, there are so many things that are potentials that will go to my grave if hopefully they never surface to a certain point. And that's one of them.
It's interesting. It's interesting you say that because Stephen King, a long time ago, he was asked a similar question about, are there any nightmares or any dreams that he's had that he felt that, that he should write about? And he said there's certain things that he won't write about. because they're so like horrifying.
Yes,
Uh,
I know what he means.
yeah.
I have them too, and I will never talk about them because I will not be responsible for giving people ideas that they should not have. And then I would be responsible for it. I mean, this is why Nostradamus wrote in his strange nebulous style. He openly admitted that it was a style that would make him considered by most to be a charlatan. But he did it anyway because he knew that those who had the sensitivity to understand his verses would understand them. And he was not going to, because he saw how he would be used as propaganda. Those verses in his prophecies that talk about how he was used as propaganda. Um, so it's there in the prophecies that he knew people in the future would do that. I don't know if he knew it or not, but it's because we all talk about Nostradamus more than any other prophets in prophetic traditions all around the world since the First and Second World War, because he was written about in the First and Second World War as foreseeing the winners and the losers of both. That's how he became world famous. And he has a fame that no other prophet has. It transcends all boundaries of religious prophetic traditions. And it's because of that attempt to use him to try to shape the future through his nebulous verses in their own hopes or fears. Uh, that was what made at least one prophecy that even the most staunch cynic and skeptic can agree with me on. Even James Randi, God rest his soul, could agree upon this, although he never allowed me to confront him with this question. Nostradamus has documented one prophecy that no one can deny is absolutely accurate. He said that I will be far more famous beyond my death than I ever was in my life. That is true. For better and worse, it is true. So
Was it true that he was buried standing up?
he was buried in a wall, probably laying down. It
Oh,
was first in a friend's, the Church of the Cordelier, which he worshipped in Franciscan churches. That's why there's all the people who think because there was this beautiful Romanesque church. I've been there, so just a few houses down from his house when the narrow street turns is a very beautiful Romanesque kind of ruin of a church. And a lot of people wrote just assuming. I mean, they obviously never looked at his life and see what he actually believed in. It's all there, and they just assumed that because it was close, that must have been the church where he went. No, he had to walk, even with his gout-ridden foot, out of the north gate of Salon-Provence to a small little church called the Church of the Cordelier, and it was run by Franciscan monks, and that's where he was buried first, in the wall. Then the French Revolution came many years, centuries later, and the Maire Salon went out because there's some looting going on in the Franciscan church. And he went out and found all these drunken National Guardsmen from Marseille who were on their way to Paris to be part of the Marseillaise, which is where that famous song "Allons avant de la patrie." That's this famous song of the French Revolution is named after the Marseillaise, the National Guardsmen from Marseille, South France. Well, anyway, they had broken into Nostradamus's tomb and they were drunk and they were tossing his bones about. And he came in, and they say that one man was tempted by some of the villagers to drink wine from his skull. Because the idea was he would gain all of his powers of foresight, but die a terrible death. And so the brave and drunk soldier tried it out. That's one of the stories. And so the mayor comes in, sees the mess, and I don't know if he knew it or not, but he yelled out, "No, these are relics of the revolution. Nostradamus saw our revolution." And so he got the drunks to grab the bones, what they could find, the skull and all that, and they picked it up. And eventually he kept them protected them. And the church later, not long after that, was destroyed by looting, cast on fire, and this church was destroyed. So it does not exist anymore, but they moved his bones to another church that was farther outside of town. And the town now is around all around that area now. So he's now in a nave in that church, and his son painted a very beautiful portrait, another of his two famous portraits of his father, Caesar, on the wall there. And I have a picture of myself next to the wall to show that I've been there. In God, when was it? It was August of 1991. After I had spent so much years in India, I went with my French sannyasins girlfriend, Satyan, to her homeland and did a pilgrimage to places that Nostradamus lived. I think anybody who's going to write books about him needs to do that. Otherwise, you end up making the mistakes that Dolores Canyon made, big mistakes, from clearly never actually being there in his house in Salon. She was in Saint-Remy, but she didn't even know there's a difference between the two, that he grew up there, but he didn't do his prophecies there. And so everybody must do that if you're going to write a book about Nostradamus, in my view. The um, yeah, so the the intriguing thing is that the prophecies of Nostradamus do predict the French Revolution and date it. I don't know if the mayor knew about that or not. There's word that it was when it was discovered that a lot of people lined up to go and read the page that was opened to that book. That's one maybe apocryphal story, but the fact is, there's no interpretation in this. He said in a letter to Henry II of France, which was delivered to him in March, the king, in 1558. It was going to be the opening letter preface to the final 3 centuries, the final 300 quatrains of his book. He decided not, though he sent it to the king, he decided that it would not be published until years later as the opening. That later happened when it was put in the all of Nostradamus took 3 serializations of his prophecies in 3 different books that he wanted to put into one volume, and he was going to put that letter in it because everybody, the king was dead, and he could then talk about the things he was talking about in that, because everybody, a lot of people who are studying Nostradamus were already talking about how he foresaw the death of the king being the cause of a string of wars of religion, civil wars across France, 9 civil wars. He lived to see the first one in 1562-63, and the last war was just ended in 1598. So it was because of these civil wars that he wrote what he wrote. He risked his life because that was dangerous to write about the future. But um, in it, he wrote a passage that's quite remarkable, where he said that the persecution of the Christian church would, at this time of this vulgar advent, this revolution of the people, common people, who would depose their king. And he said at that time, the people would think this movement was a new age, so much so that they would create a new calendrical system, a new calendar in the year 1792. It's written, the numbers are written by Nostradamus in the prophecy. It's not something you could make into 1792. It's 1792. The first French Republic was formed in 1792, and they decreed that because this was a new age, their revolution, that they would start a new revolutionary calendar, which was started in September of 1792, and it was used throughout the 10 years of the revolutionary period of France and well into the Napoleonic Empire before they went back to the Gregorian calendar. Um, I mean, this is a remarkable success and there are many of them in Nostradamus. There are many others that are open to interpretation. It's a mountain of prophecies that are open to interpretation. And in my own studies of it, I make that very clear. But there are a few hundred of them that are just gobsmacking, chillingly, wow, this guy saw this. And I came in as a true skeptic. That means I was not with an idea that it was true or untrue. Just go in, and then I just started seeing that, yeah, there's some there. There's other stuff that's open, but there's a lot of there. Now, I missed one thing to the first question, is Trump, that's important to look at Trump as possibly in Nostradamus's prophecies. There's about a half dozen or so four-line quatrains where people who will interpret Nostradamus. There are blind debunkers like James Randi who can't find anything right in Nostradamus, but they're equally blind believers. And some of them are pretty famous writers on Nostradamus who believe that Nostradamus can never be wrong. Well, if you're looking to find something in Nostradamus, if you're unconscious of your own bias to make it happen, you'll find it. You'll find it. And I think the reason why I've been one of the longest living Nostradamian scholars on this is because early on I discovered that trap that most writers have not. Who have published books. Nostradamus, um, if you're a person looking for a word that sounds like Trump, the closest you'll get is Trombe. Trombe can mean a couple things. It could mean trumpet, trumpet, and apocope, use of when some letters are missing for rhyme. It can, but its old French meaning is whirlwind. And what does Nostradamus in several of his revolutionary French prophecies call it? He calls it the whirlwind. Now, I always wondered if it's just poetic. I mean, it's a great poetic, like revolutions are like that. People are carried off, whether they like it or not, into the whirlwind, the great storm of a revolution that pures, cleans everything out, purifies, destroys, and makes way for other things to come. I was reading a very good set of translations from what was originally a French book. Actually, it's in this pile of books that I use so that in front that you can't see so I can type because I write standing. I'm always standing in these interviews, by the way. Um, I have one book in here, a very big volume on the French Revolution, which is based on translations. It was originally in French, but it was also illustrated and translated in English of all the journals, all the newspapers of those times, right, for the 10 years of the revolutionary times. It's very detailed. It's kind of stuff that I'm always trying to find because Nostradamus was seeing, feeling, and smelling and hearing the future. So you got to see the weather, you got to see what they're wearing, you've got to see the details because he's seeing it like a movie. So there has to be a very deep study of that. And reading journals, I stumbled upon something that was quite remarkable. I I stumbled upon a report that happened around in the summer of of 1788, and it was like almost a year to the date, 1789, around 14th of July, that the French Revolution began with the storming of the Bastille. It talked about a year before that, and it didn't know about the revolution, so it's not talking about that, but it didn't know what I knew about what was coming. But it talked about something that was very freaky that happened in the weather of France during the summer of 1788. There was a huge string of thunderstorms that went across central France, over Paris, over the heartland of the grain fields, Loire, and all that. In one day. It was like something you'd see in Kansas, some freaky storm that had tornadoes in it, whirlwinds, trombe, and they called it the trombe, de Trombe in it in the journal. Um, that's just the kind of detail that might come up for Nostradamus. He called it the whirlwind. The whirlwind that happened almost exactly a year before the revolution destroyed the crops of 1788. It ruined, and of course, it took the next year when the harvest happened and the bread was made to see that the bread was not enough and overpriced. In fact, it reminds me of the thing that a lot of people said to the king when he became the monarch, constitutional monarch, Louis XVI. He said, we will follow you, Louis XVI, unless the bread gets too expensive to eat. So it did. And it was the bread riots. It was the collapse of the food that caused food prices becoming inflated. That's what triggered the French Revolution.
You want to hear something freaky?
What?
You want to hear something really freaky?
Yeah.
All right. So you're
Freak is my
saying
middle name.
you're talking about 1788,
Mm-hmm.
and you're talking about whirlwind.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and if we extrapolate this out to 1988, all right, Oprah on July 28th. Oh, wait, was it on July 28th? I'm not sure what day it was. I'd have to research it a little bit more. But in 1988, Oprah asked Donald Trump if he would run for president. That's the famous interview.
That's right. I remember that. Um, he was a bit coy about
Not
it.
sure what day that was, but the year was 1988.
He was beginning when I wrote my book about his astrology a year before he was elected in the first term, and Trump for president, astrological predictions. And, he was too young then, but he kind of thought it might be a long shot, but he's thought about it. He did say that. And he almost ran in 2012, I think, against Obama, but he explained that his kids weren't ready to take over the Trump empire. He had to work with them a few more years. And then he was ready in 2016 to run because the kids were able, and it's proven they were able to run the Trump empire just fine.
She asked on air on April 25th.
Okay.
It was a Monday.
This is an interesting coincidence, certainly, but that's as far as it goes for me on this. It's more chilling for me that a thing called in the journals people were reading all over France, the Trombe, the whirlwind. So is Trump a whirlwind? Well, the problem with all the interpretations that tried to make they were really trying hard in 2016 to make him out as being foreseen by Nostradamus. It was a little less this time around, but there are about 5 quatrains that talk about Trombe. And but the only way you can make it work is if you completely ignore all the other French words in the verse. And some of them were very clear about something that wasn't Trump. There is one that kind of plays around with that could be about Trump, and it's about Egypt. So I'm looking at that again with fresh eyes for this new report and see now if things are happening. So there's one that might, and I'm not one that's going to run and grab anything that I want to see as true. But there's one that I have to look out a little closer to see if maybe trumpet, Trump. But it's not an antichrist. He's not the third antichrist. That's very specific to other rules. But he certainly, my God, if he ends up the man who potentially destroys the world in a third world war by, gaining bad advice, I'd be a little surprised if Nostradamus didn't see him. But then why should I consider him seeing that? It's again, bias. Why should he see it? He was passive the visions came to him. He didn't chase the visions. He'd surround himself in his magic circle and have a little triangle where the spirit would talk to him, and he would cast stuff, and he would just set down like a reporter whatever he got, and then codify it in a way that it would not be easy to fulfill, unless it's something so dangerous or potentially earth-changing of human future that he'd come a little more out in the clear than he ever did with other stuff. And guess what? The subject of Persia comes out of the clear more than most. And in, from 2006 to 2007, when I wrote my first version of Nostradamus, The War with Iran, up to the update I did in October of 2013, there it is. Persia is a country of destiny that whatever happens to its fate is a very new direction or a non-direction for our human future. And this may be it. What happens over the next few months of this war? It may be that this is the end of a hegemon, a very dramatic military defeat for the United States, where it loses maybe 2 or 3 carriers and other ships to hypersonic missiles. I mean, there are 50,000 servicemen and women scattered across in bases that are completely exposed across the Western Asian area. Iran can strike all of them. And like it showed in 2020 to Trump, says when it made a point not hitting any place that had people in it, but hitting places that would have had people in it because they launched the missiles, told Trump, we've launched our missiles. We're going to give you a demonstration of what we can do to your Aska or your Al-Assad air base in Iraq, north of Baghdad. Get your people in shelters. We don't want to hurt anybody, but you're going to see what we could do. And they didn't hurt anybody, but they surgically annihilated all the storage areas, the part areas, the hangars, where all the drones that were used to assassinate Soleimani as he was getting in his motorcade to find a letter from Saudi Arabia to bring peace and détente to between Iran and Saudi Arabia. And Americans didn't want that to happen. So they killed him and they assassinated him, and it was Trump's. It's on his first watch that this happened. Um, so I've always said about Trump, he never gets the Middle East. I said that for a year before he was even elected. His astrology, he just doesn't get the Middle East. And it could be to his downfall.
Do you think that North Korea will be sending nuclear weapons to Iran? I saw a report talking.
Yes, I think it's quite possible. And not only that, the reports that I thought were fantastic a year ago, that some of my sources, really good ones, like Scott Ritter, and who's been a source of mine since 2003. But I listened. He was even saying, that the Pakistanis, if Israel used one of its nukes that are not supposed to exist, there might be about 200 of them, or just 70. If the Jewish state used a nuke on Muslims, a Muslim country, they would retaliate with a nuclear strike on Israel. So, and they can do that. So that North Korea is offering that. Pakistan may very well strike Israel if they do that. That's a possibility. So we'll see. We live in very interesting times.
Another interesting time that you lived through, I did too, but I don't remember it so well. Watergate.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm reading a book from Jeffrey Toobin. It's called Pardon. I'm almost done with the book. Yeah, The Pardon. The Pardon. Right.
Oh, that's when Gerald Ford pardoned Nixon.
So my question is, was there anything that Nostradamus had in his writings that hinted to Watergate?
I used to think so. It's an interesting evolution. And it's also a unique prophecy for Nostradamus because it has a word clue that only happens twice in two different uh, emergences, and the story is kind of the same. Like they're parts of one story. Um, the I call them let's see, the dubieux quatrains. One's in masculine, un dubieux, a doubtful one, and the other is in feminine, la dubieuse. And so it's a person who's called the doubtful one. And it's the only time that he spells out the capital, that word, like the US Capitol. And it talks about how this doubtful one would the 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 capital would be against him, and all of his great projects would come to naught. In so many words, I'm paraphrasing. And in 1995, I wrote my from Nostradamus, The Complete Prophecies, being one of four people in 4.7 centuries that tried to translate the complete main prophecies of Nostradamus, all the 1100 quatrains and the two prophetic letters, the epistle to Henry II, which I spoke of earlier, and the preface to Caesar, his son. And this is what people mistakenly call the complete prophecies of Nostradamus. Even I had to call it that, although now I am working on truly the complete prophecies. There's a whole larger part of his work that hasn't even seen the eyes of most people. That's in his almanacs that she wrote from 1550, with one missing in 1551. We're still trying to find it. And then starting again from 1552 to 1559. And they are more verbose than all of the quatrains in the prose prophecies, that they're set for months of each year, and some special setups of themes. And the thing is that as there's also 154 verses that belong to that also show up in all of the almanacs, but the prose prophecy stopped showing up by 1560. He was getting older. It's a lot of work. They got bigger and more verbose. The first guy in English to translate my first rough translation of them. Nobody else has done that. So it's kind of a milestone in Nostradamian history. Um, and hopefully things will calm down a bit. I can get back to finishing it. But anyway, the what we see in the verses may be repeated in the prose prophecies. They're often accurate to the month that they're supposed to be in, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes they sound like things that happen a few years later, or decades later, or centuries later. So I'm now going to find out. I'm just embarking this journey that nobody's done yet in French, just fragments in French, but nobody's ever done them all. Just Chauvigny, his secretary, was the first one to try to uh, grab all the different editions and put them in the same book. And he would do one-liners uh, that were not really, some were interesting, but that wasn't really a really look at what it could mean. So really nobody's done it until I'm attempting it. Um, and they will come out it'll be 3,000 pages divided into four 750 page volumes, which will probably start appearing in book form and in ebook form in 2028, 2029, 2030, and 2031. I already have the covers designed and the real name of it. I just call it the Nostradamus Project. I'm not going to name it until the first one's published. You'll all know then. It has a very interesting name. I've lost the thread a bit. What was your question again?
It was, did Nostradamus write anything about Watergate?
Yes. So I'm, I thought it was Nixon that was being talked about and Watergate in this one prophecy. The Capitol would not have him anymore, and then all of his great dreams and projects would and I remember what was happening. I was up in the Mammoth Mountains camping at 9,000 feet with my family, and we were listening to the radio of him making his speech, his farewell speech. And when the next day he got into the helicopter and did his final and then left. Um, I think a movie that captures the mythos of it that it's a movie Oliver Stone made that very few people have seen. Uh, but his movie Nixon is quite remarkable, capturing the whole issue that being fair, you know, I mean, he was fair with W too. He tries to be fair.
But do you think the Nixon movie was better than W? I saw Bush.
I think it's hard to. It would be better to ask, was Nixon a better man to be president than George W. Bush as a subject? I mean, Oliver Stone did the man as he was, a mediocrity. Um, and God, the Brolin was God, did he do yeoman work trying to do that? Uh, but Nixon is more than that. Nixon, I often think that Nixon, if Watergate had not happened, Nixon had his dark side. He's a complicated man. But Nixon also did some remarkable things that, in fact, uh, I think his solution to welfare would have probably fixed welfare in the late 1960s when he was just starting, well, when he was in his first term, 68, 69. He had an idea that the problem with the way the Democrats were running the welfare system is they were rewarding people to stay on the welfare for the simple reason that if you got a job, you actually were being paid less than the welfare check would give you. So why go to work? So it was perpetuating people not working. So he said, we've got to give people an incentive to work. So let them have half their welfare check for a period of several months while they get their money from working. And the addition of both would be more money than you give them a transitory period. Well, the Democrats voted it down because he would have been insured probably a second term. This is in the beginning of his first term. A lot of people have never imagined what happened in 72, where he would have this biggest landslide in history. Um, but then they picked McGovern, wrong, good man, very good man, but a wrong, not the kind of man to go toe to toe with Richard Nixon. So I thought it was incredibly bold of Oliver Stone to pick Anthony Hopkins to play Nixon because he doesn't look like Nixon. And even Anthony complains that, are you sure you want me to play Nixon? He says, I think the way you'll play him will be so hypnotically good that, and he was going to do something at the end of the movie, as Oliver Stone's so bold. What they do in the movie, and it was one of the most shocking things I ever saw. It really, you've gone so deep with him being Nixon that you forgot all about the Nixon um, that we knew. And then at the end, when they're playing all through the movie with the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, they brought up his religious background as a Quaker, and they would so they're playing Shenandoah. Oh, Shenandoah, I long to see you way away, you rolling Or they sing the eyes have seen the glory of the coming of. It was, and they speed up the film. The clouds would go fast. The flags are fluttering. He did some amazing things in that. But what you see is the footage of Richard Nixon and his wife Pat getting into the helicopter, waving to everybody, trying to keep up a good face and ready to crumble. And it was so shocking to see how utterly unsimilar physically was Anthony Hopkins to the role. But he had become Nixon in this movie. Even Nixon had, had to kind of come in as like some stranger. Um, and that was in cinema. That's one of my most profound experiences of seeing a performance do that, where it was so deep that you didn't get lost in, oh, he doesn't, his nose isn't right. You know, the spirit, he was the spirit of Nixon. And and I think the guy who did W, I think he caught that pretty good too. But you know, the thing, if it's less a movie, it's because George W. is less a man than Richard Nixon.
When Oliver Stone did the World Trade Center movie, I didn't think that was that good.
I haven't
Honestly,
seen
I was
it.
expecting it to be better.
I haven't seen it actually. Um, uh, but I am watching something that I think every American or anybody who is a fan of my work or just looking at the world, if you want to get a fairer view of what President Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin really is, watch Stone's four-part over several years where he interviewed him man to man. If you want to get a real study of the man you're not seeing in your press reports, that's it. He's hard hitting. Putin likes it. He's not shy from that. He's that's the Vladimir Putin that I have been seeing in real time in real life. That is not the house elf, Dobby the house elf evil little character that runs the show like a dictator. And Russia's not run like that. Neither is Iran. It's, as I was saying before, if we're not informed, we will die because stupidity and propaganda will make us fulfill Stormberger's prophecies from the late 1700s when he accurately foresaw World War I, II, and perhaps World War III, where he said, with open eyes shall the people of the world walk into that catastrophe. Open eyes shut to the truth, open only to narrative rather than reality. And there is this world war, one side of this world war is all about propagating a narrative and not really dealing with reality. And it has led us to the war with Ukraine, proxy war. It has led us to be driven down the primrose path by Zionists like Smotrich, like Gvir, and like Netanyahu, and the Adelsons, and our president down a decision-making. I mean, I'm not even sure he knows what's going on. I don't think some of the things that have happened in these last few weeks, like when he was told, "Are you aware that?" by a reporter, "Are you aware that because they're Vladimir Putin's going crazy, he's killing a bunch of civilians. I don't understand. He's lost his mind." Very stupid thing for a president to say. An 8-year-old can say it, and he does have an inner 8-year-old, and it was on big time. Ah, he's gone crazy. You know, the reality of that is that what he was seeing, but I know because I watched how they portray it. I've seen it live, what happened in Kiev. What had happened is when the Russians were sending in their drones and their missiles hitting military targets and stockpile targets, the Ukrainians take their Patriot missiles, they don't know how to use them. And sometimes what they do is they fire the whole missile battery, like $350 million worth of missiles. And you'll be seeing the missiles coming in and the drones coming in. And you'll see someone going like that. And then you'll see one going, just somebody pushed the shoot all button. Uh, and so he fired literally $300 million of missiles everywhere, and they all fall across. You got a whole battery of missiles shot into the air. Where they fall, they do not know where, and they fell all in the apartment buildings of Kiev. So many of the shots of civilians and civilian structures being destroyed in Kiev are from the Ukrainians misshooting their U.S. Patriot missiles. And that's what Trump saw. Somebody might have said, look what he's doing. He's killing all those people. And then Trump, not being the man, but being the 8-year-old sometimes, was, oh man, what are they doing? He's gone crazy. What's wrong? And then anyway, so this reporter said to him, but are you aware, Mr. President, that when the drone attacks that were going into Russia, are you aware that a swarm of drones was out to blow up President Putin's helicopter when he was landing? Yeah, there was an assassination attempt made on Putin. And he kind of stopped and went, no, no, I don't know about that. And I think he was telling the truth. He kind of looked like, no, I don't know that. Well, maybe that was the reason he went crazy. So, he's not getting uh, he is being surrounded by people who have crowded out the people that the American people through their Congress picked, like Tulsi Gabbard, to give him the real scoop of what's going down. And he has surrounded himself with Israeli specialists, Israeli Mossad people and all. I don't think he's listening to American specialists. I think he's getting the scuttlebutt from Israeli Mossad and stuff. He's listening to someone else's intel that have their own agenda. The main being, we can't win a war against this last bastion of people we want to take down, the Iranians, unless we get our big dumb American friends to stumble into this with all their major power, this great dumb giant going in and go, okay, I'll take care of them. Yeah. And walk ourselves into this war. Um, and I'm saying this because I don't want American servicemen and women drowning by the tens of thousands in the oceans or dying in the tens of thousands from Iranian missile strikes. It's not our war. And Trump got into presidency promising the MAGA movement that not to get us into another forever war. Come home, America, fix the country, restore our industrial base, make us self-reliant again, get our education systems in order, cut out all the fat that's in the government. I mean, it started good with USAID being taken down, but it seems like it all then stopped. I've been warning everybody on these shows and in my writings that if you want to see if they're serious about cutting the budgets, the next step should have been Doge going in and cutting down the U.S. military industrial complex, the Pentagon. They did not touch it, not a cent. And I said, okay. Then what was really being trimmed down here was all the fat to make the deep state in certain places leaner and meaner and more manipulative than before. So the whole Doge thing was a failure. And so,
It had potential, but it didn't
oh,
materialize.
yeah, I mean, I love the idea, but it also, a lot of people also got hurt, because, for instance, give you an example, in some of the stuff that was records of people that was being held and they wanted to just dump all of it. They didn't black out people's social security numbers. So all these people suddenly everybody knew people's social security numbers and they were compromised. I mean, eh, Doge, this should have taken some time to sit back and think about, okay, how do we really cut this? How can we cut this? And let's not just go in like with a buzz saw and take out the good with the bad, and a lot of Doge was that because it really needed more time to really think it out and look exactly at what was going to be cut. But of course, the way our democracy is so broken now, you don't have time. Trump doesn't have time. So we went in with I think it was a justifiable symbol. The Doge leader, Mr. Musk, with his Millet Argentinian chainsaw going. I mean, this is like a scene out of Idiocracy, a movie everybody must watch. It's a great parody.
Or Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, so President Camacho, this guy goes into the future where the level of idiocy of the United States has reached profound proportions to the point of being a very funny movie, but also very telling about the situation. Great satire. So it's called Idiocracy. You got to see it.
We have one last question, and that's from Amber. And she asked a question, I think, last episode. So she wants to know, do you think that Trump is scared what to do with Iran? Do you think he's internally fearful?
I think what a lot of my sources say about Trump, I he he is he wants to be a strong man, but he really isn't. He talks the talk, he walks the walk. Um, but he isn't. He's got this again. It's like a new journey with me. I've been in my journey with Trump for many years and watched things change. And the one hand, I used to say how honest it was when he goes into his 8-year-old innocent 8-year-old, where he in 60 Minutes, I've said it before, where he's talking and suddenly he has this little epiphany, and it's like a real honest, innocent moment. He goes, you know, I've I haven't changed since I was 8 year old. I haven't changed a bit since I'm 8 years old. It was just such an honest thing. And I've seen there's moments when he comes from that 8-year-old innocence, because he's very instinctive in how he does things. He doesn't read, he's instinctive. But what I'm seeing happening now is his dark 8-year-old is running the show. The bully wimp is running the show. The kid that got a little bigger than the other kids and started bullying everybody. And you know what happens with a bully? Sometime they run into somebody that just is tougher than they are, and they get broken nose and thumped on their butt. And I think Iran is just the kind of nation that might do that. And that's also a bit collective to the hubris of the entire country of the United States. You know, we're pushing our weight around, and we're coming to a point in world history where that doesn't have a lot of weight anymore. It's more bravado than reality. It was true that at the end of the last Cold War in 1998, America was a hegemonic super unipower. And, that was hooray for us, but it has its downsides. The people who win wars learn less from them than the people who lose wars. Uh, because we won, we didn't examine ourselves. How did we win? Could we done better? No, we won. I don't need to know it. I won. I'm the guy. I've got the big one, and I don't need to think about anything because all my enemies have been defeated. But that's the beginning of the end. The very start of the peak of the hegemon is the beginning of the end, because if there's no self-reflection, um, you will follow this hubris as if you're still, this is still, a lot of our leaders, including Trump, still think that we're living in the America of 1990 as the unstoppable hegemon. Well, we're not. We are we are the fall of the Roman Empire right now. And we are not a people to have been imperial. This is so against American nature, in my view. Is for us, it's been a curse that we became a hegemon. I think it would be great for us for a time to come home, fix our own lives, fix our own society, return to our constitutional values, and be isolationists for the sake of the world and ourselves for a time. Just come home, America. Stop playing Rome. You're not Rome, but you don't want to die like Rome did, and you're about to do it. Come home.
We're near the end of the show here, but I want to remind the audience that in the description of all the videos that I've been doing with John in this live stream, there are links that you can click to get to his website. So please click the link, sign up for the periodical and a reading. So John, if you would like to explain that to the audience, you have a decent sized audience tonight. So
I expected, I wasn't sure there was any news tonight, but I guess there was some news. That's good to know. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And thank also in advance all the people that are coming in the coming days to watch. Thank you for sharing your time and considering the crazy man with the beard's ideas. And um, yeah, I've actually been doing a fundraiser, uh, and it's gotten off to a good start. And thank all of you who've helped, because I'm in a transition where I need certain funds to make how I deliver stuff to the world easier to see. For instance, I'm going to be redesigning my website so that you can see it on your cell phone, which is for a long time now that hasn't happened. So I've lost a lot of eyeballs, as you say, as one says in the business. And so, any contribution that you can make with me, the way I do contributions, certainly if you go to HogueProphecy.com and follow the links, you can make a contribution, but I always like to give something back. When people give me financial support, I like to give them something back. And what I usually do then is, if you donate uh, $60 or more, you will get 12 months of the Hogue Prophecy Report, which is illustrated PDF that I send you by email. It's the greatest way to get under the censors. And so that's one way. You can also find some of my articles on X, John Hogue on X. And I'm updating them now, and soon I'll have the newest ones out. And it will be a similar format than HogueProphecy.com, where you will get some free articles from the Hogue Prophecy report that just came out and large excerpts of the other articles that you would get if you're a full-time subscriber. And so I'm working to build that up now as well. Um, I will also be starting a Patreon page and a Substack page. So this is in this process, if you can help me more than usual right now, I've had a lot of very generous donations from longtime subscribers and friends, and hopefully more of you can give and help this work. If you find it unique, if it's helping you, please help me continue this work by your support and your patronage. Thank you.
do you want to say anything about the readings?
Ah, yes, that's another way. If you help me, I can help you with a reading. I do readings. They are usually 2 hours long, so it goes deep. We use astrology, we use divination, we use tarot. And so I do an unusual form of the Celtic cross. Frankly, I'm still trying to find out there if people do it the way I do it. Celtic cross, for those who don't know what it is basically you have a center card, a card over it, above, below, this way and that, and it develops a simple cross. And you will do a situation where here's the issue, this is the key and the lock, because they're both part of the answer and no answer. The top card is the 1/10 of the conscious world's message to you. You know, we live on the surface of things so much, and underneath the shape of our wave-like existence moving and making this world, there's this whole oceanic side of us that also has a message because it's the source of everything. That's the bottom card. This is the past card, and then this is the future. Now, this may be the past of just a few days or seconds ago, or it could be your past lives. And then this is the future. Now, what I do that I think I've never heard anybody do it. I just started doing it, and I was kind of surprised. But that's how the mediumship works for me. Things happen, and I follow them. Is that if I'm seeing a card in the process of doing the first Celtic cross that is saying, "Tell them more, tell them more," I pull that card out and I start a whole new Celtic cross on it. And what'll happen, sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes it happens where I go through 3 Celtic crosses and then you'll see it happen in the cards. Suddenly, and I don't know how it works. And as a medium should remain a millipede, never having a bunny ask him how he walks on all those legs without thinking. No thinking is very important in medium work. No mind, just being. I just it's suddenly these cards are coming out with an important message that is quite remarkable. And I hope I'm not the only one who does this, but it is one of the unique things that can happen in these readings. And most of the people that have a reading, they've they've really had an incredible time, and I've certainly had an incredible, beautiful time sharing with them. And so that's another way. And you'll see on the links that Paul has, you'll see that there's a link for the Hogue readings, and it says Hogue readings, and you click on it, and it will give you a an email. And all you need to do, if you just want to get in touch with me, unless you want to say something, which is fine, I welcome that too. But if you just want to get my attention, just put in the subject line Hogue reading, Hogue reading, and because of all the emails I get, I'll see that. And I'll always look for it the first time of the day. And then I'll get back to you and I will give you further instructions, times, what it costs, and other things, and how you can get yourself a free astrological birth chart set up by astro.com that then you send to me as a PNG file. It's very easy. I have the instructions. So yes, I have a lot of openings this coming period. So let's fill them up with readings.
Awesome. So just to remind the audience, click the link that's in the description of this video and all the videos that I do with John, and they'll take you to his website and you can sign up for his periodicals, readings, and donate. So John, thank you very much for another episode. This is episode 36.
Wow.
And yeah, I think it turned out really well. If you would like to just say good night and goodbye to everybody before we sign off.
Goodbye to everybody.
All right, so let me end the recording here, John. Hold on.